PETER KALLI Car Museum tells us the exciting story of the former Soviet Union car industry. The museum is located in Estonia, 100 kilometers from Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, in Halinga. PETER KALLI, the owner and founder of the museum, began to collect Soviet cars almost 2 decades ago. Today, in the museum, you'll discover more than 50 different types of cars produced in the Soviet Union and some other countries. We'll introduce you to some popular cars, and we'll remind you of some of the prominent persons who used to use them. Boris Yeltsin, President of the Russian Federation, from 1991 to 1999. This kind of Volga model was used by the Russian leader, Boris Yeltsin. Unfortunately for Mr. Yeltsin, he got into a car accident in the centre of Moscow in October 1990. Luckily, his injuries were not too serious. Much worse was the car accident that took place in Belarus in 1980. The Chico car was totally destroyed, and the leader of the Belarus Republic, Peter Masharov, was killed. Mr. Yeltsin was a very keen motorist. In the beginning of the 1990s, he'd bought for his family a car named Moskowitz. This car, in the former Soviet Union, was nearly as popular as the Model T in the United States. Different Moskowitz types were used in rally competitions a few decades ago. The history of the Moskowitz car family began with the model Moskowitz 401. This car was released onto the Soviet market after the Second World War in 1947. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Nobel Prize winner in 1970. This Moskowitz model was used by Nobel Prize winner Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the 1960s. Having this car, the writer travelled several times from Russia to Estonia in the years 1964 to 65. It was in Estonia he wrote the main chapters of the Nobel Prize novel Gulag Archipelago. At the same time when Alexander Solzhenitsyn was writing his Nobel Prize winning novel Gulag Archipelago in Estonia, in the Soviet Union, Leonid Brezhnev came to power. He became well known as a keen hunter and car collector. In the PETER KALLI Car Museum, you could see some Chico Limousines. It means seagull. Models which were used by Leonid Brezhnev in the late 1960s. This type of car was often used by former Soviet Union leaders and diplomats. The Chico Limousine was produced in Gorky Car Factory. In the museum, you can see the Chico limousine used by the Estonian leader Arnold Rüütel in the late 1980s. It's interesting to remember that it was in this type of car that the Russian leader Boris Yeltsin went from Tallinn to Leningrad on the night of January the 14th in 1991. Boris Yeltsin's Chico was followed by the security team. Armed members of the team used a car named the Zhiguli. In January 1991, Mr. Yeltsin visited Estonia by the invitation of the Estonian leader, Arnold Rüütel. Mr. Rüütel served as the Estonian Republic President from the years 2001 to 2006. The Zhiguli, or Lada, the most popular car in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Zhiguli, or Lada, was developed in cooperation with the Italian car company Fiat from the mid-60s. More than 300,000 cars were produced at the Volga car factory in the year 1972. This car was exported from the Soviet Union by the name Lada, which means beloved. The PETER KALLI Car Museum exhibits different types of Lada cars. Soviet people were surprised that in wintertime it was not necessary to wear warm clothes inside these cars. The Zhiguli, or Lada, became the most popular car in the Soviet Union from the 1970s until the end of the Soviet Union. The PETER KALLI Car Museum is telling the wide-ranging story of the Soviet Union car industry. One of the oldest Soviet cars is the Pobeda, which means victory. Production began in 1945. Pobeda was used by the famous Estonian singer Georg Ots. Mr. Ots was very well known and loved not only in Estonia. He often visited other Soviet Union republics and Finland as well. Some years later, he exchanged his Pobeda for a Volga. Sometimes things happened with Mr. Ots and his Volga, as you see in the next photo. Often his Volga was used in different films produced by the studio Tallinn Film. The Volga was the Gorky car factory's successor, the Pobeda. It became very famous and was modified several times. In the PETER KALLI Car Museum, you can enjoy the great family of Volga cars. One of the smallest cars of the Soviet car industry was the Zaporozhets. It was known by the nickname Bubble Car, with a price of 1,800 rubles in the mid-1960s. This car was very similar to the Fiat model, the Fiat 500. Zaporozhets came onto the Soviet market in 1961 from the Dnieper River area of Zaporozhye in the Ukraine Republic. Sometimes things happened with bubble cars, as you'll see in the following photo. In the PETER KALLI Car Museum exhibition, you can see cars produced at the following car factories of the Soviet Union. The Gorky Car Factory, the Moscow Car Factory, the small car company Kommunar in Zaporozhye, Ukraine, and the Volga Car Company in Togliatti, Russia. This Jaika was used by Lennart Meri, President of the Estonian Republic, from 1992 to 2001. It was President Meri and President Yeltsin who signed the agreement for the departure of the Soviet army groups from Estonia in August 1994. By the way, next to this area of the museum, you can study Soviet period military cars. This Rambler car belongs to Paul Keres. Estonian Paul Keres was known worldwide as one of the best chess players. Each year the museum is visited by tourists from Finland, Russia, Latvia, Lithuania, Germany, and even from Japan. In October 2018, the founder and owner of the museum, PETER KALLI, met Japanese freelance journalist Yumi Kawabata. The first time she visited the museum was in 2017. After that, she wrote an article for the Old Car Fans magazine in Japan. In Japan, there's a great interest in the former Soviet Union cars and the car industry, she explained. In the PETER KALLI Car Museum, the Soviet cars are having the greatest part of the exhibition. By the way, an interesting overview can be had by looking at the rich collection of the car models. Welcome to the PETER KALLI Car Museum. Our museum is open from May to October every day from 10 AM to 6 PM, and from October to May it's open at the weekends. Additional information can be found at the following addresses: